Welcome everyone to this new episode of Embodied Memories, Narratives of African Diasporic Religious Communities. And we are so blessed to have with now different names us. Welcome, Nedra, and I'm so happy that you're here with us. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, it's such an honor and a privilege. And so we always start off with asking then about naming. Can you please tell us your full name and what you prefer to be called?
My full birth name is Nedra Williams, and my spiritual name is Ohin Imini Nosopikan. It is an Edo name, but I'm often called in the tradition Iya, which is a Yoruba term for mother. So I'm called Iya Nedra or Ohin Imini or Imini. So there are many things. Most of my god kids just say Iya, Iya, or they'll say Imini, so. I can tell you what it means. Ohin is the Edo term for priestess. It means priestess. So all those that are initiated into the system, they have Ohin in the beginning of their name. And then Imini is your road. And Nosopakian is, which I don't use a lot, but it's not a nickname, but it's a more spiritual, esoteric part of the name. And my name means the doctor whose roots twist from the earth to the heavens. So I have a path of healing and medicine in my road.
Powerful. Such a powerful name for a powerful woman. So thank you for sharing that with us. And so during this interview now, can I call you Iya Nedra?
Yes, you may. Yes.
Iya Nedra, Mama Nedra.
Yes, that's fine.
Iya Nedra. Awesome. And so Iya Nedra, what pronouns do you use?
She, her,
her.
Female.
Okay.
I'm a female, honey.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's good. It's going to be really useful for us because when people watch the video, when they listen to the podcast, we want them to refer to you in the proper way. So now we all know. We don't want to make assumptions.
Thank you.
And do you agree to be a part of this research study?
Oh my God. I was so excited when you first initially called me. I was yes, because I just think it's so important for these things to get recorded, to be used in a way. And I know that you're going to use it educationally. I'm just so happy for that. So I want to be a part of this and I'm happy to be a part. Yes.
Oh my God. And I'm just so thrilled. Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much. Such a revered and honored elder in the community. So, you're definitely who we wanted to speak to. You're who we wanted to talk to for this project. So I'm so happy that you agreed and to take this time with us. So now I want to ask, what city do you live in?
I live in the Bay Area and I live in Oakland, California.
In Oakland, okay.
The best
and when did you
city
move?
In the world.
You said what?
The best city in the world.
The best city. Okay. Oakland. I'd have to agree. I love Oakland.
Yes.
There's something about Oakland. It's very, very special. I do. And when did you move to the Bay Area?
Well, I'm a native Californian, and but I was actually born in Berkeley at Herrick Hospital, so people will know this area. Okay. But I've always lived in Oakland. Yes, from North Oakland to now East Oakland.
Oh wow! See, I did not know that. Is there something that you'd like to ask me before we go any further?
Well, why? I know that you could have done research in many, many things. Why this and this particular area? I don't know if you're doing other interviews with other people, and how do you see the educational piece of this piece developing? Because I used to teach a long time ago, so yeah. So I'm very interested in that, and I'm just so glad that you told me it has sort of that component.
Yes. Thank you for these questions. Why am I doing this project? It was, there was a grant opportunity. The Crossroads, this is funded by a fellowship. I applied for this fellowship with the Crossroads Project that's run out of Princeton University. It's funded by the Henry Luce Foundation. And the purpose of the Crossroads Project was to document African American religious practices and communities, right? Particularly those that have been underrepresented. And so I just wanted to use that opportunity as an academic and as a mambo. I am a priestess in Haitian voodoo. So I'm a spiritualist and I'm an academic. And I'm always looking for opportunities to converge those two, right? And to see how we can merge them. And so I wanted to really use the opportunity when the grant opportunity was forwarded to me, and I, had to apply for it. We really were thinking about how could we use this opportunity to serve the community, right? And so it's thrilling for me. It's like perfect. It's melding all of my passions for spirit, my passions for storytelling. I'm a writer, my passions for education, so I'm trying to develop lesson plans according to each interview, right? So my goal is for teachers, for middle school and high school teachers, to be able to use these interviews to weave them into their social studies curricula, to their English curricula, and to give them some guidance with that, right? So it's something that I hope to be able to give people an embodied memory study guide, and for each video, it has comprehension questions, some vocabulary, it has extension activities. So I want to do that work for teachers who are really interested in, in ensuring that their students learn more about Black religious traditions and African diasporic religious traditions in general, and that they are promoting their religious literacy, but they just don't know how. Our teachers are overburdened, they're overworked, they don't have the time. So I just want to alleviate some of that and look to see how, as an academic, we can really support our teachers and our educators whose hearts are in the right place, but they just don't have the content, and then they don't have a lot of the time to create the curricula. So that's why I see myself kind of,
so powerful. I wish this was when I was growing up, even had anything like this. So these youth is just powerful. Yeah, I'm happy for you.
Yeah, thank you. It's such an honor. So, I'm trying to get in where I fit in and, do my work, do the work that God has called me to do, wherever it takes me.
Yes.
Wherever it takes me, in that intersections of academia and in the spiritual community. So so I mean, this is really interesting to me. So you were born in Berkeley, and you've always lived in Oakland, which for some reason I know we'll get into that, but I know that you went to school outside of the east of the West Coast. So I assume that you were from the East Coast.
No.
I didn't know that.
My education outside, because my family believed in HBUs. I went to my mother, grandma, all went to HBUs. My sister, my niece.
Okay.
So I when it came time to go to college, it wasn't even thinking about where you had to pick from the HBCUs. So I went to Fisk. I didn't want
in
to go
Nashville.
In Nashville.
All right.
That's how I got. So that was my first, and then from there I went to East Coast to Boston College. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's fantastic.
That's how I got to the East Coast. Yeah.
Look at that. Okay. Oh, I can't wait to get there. I can't wait. We're gonna come back there. But you told us that you were born in Berkeley. And if you may share with us, what year were you born?
I am proudly to say I was born August 5th, 1950.
Oh, wow. August 5th, 1950. Oh, okay. You know what the numbers?
In the morning.
8550.
Yes.
That's like my numbers.
Okay.
As my numbers are 5881.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I was born at 7:11 in the morning.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So August 5th, 1950, and you were born in Berkeley. What hospital? Can you tell us the name of that?
Herrick Hospital.
Herrick Hospital?
Herrick Hospital, which is no longer there. And my family lived in Berkeley for about 3 years of my life, and then they moved to Oakland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And so you grew up in Oakland.
I grew up in Oakland, went to all the public schools in Oakland, Parker Elementary, King Junior High, Skyline High. So yeah, I went to public ed. My family believed deeply in public education, which I don't know. Well, let me not go into all that now, but yeah, I went to those schools.
And so you said that your family believed deeply in public education. How do you feel about the education that you received? I mean, you must have been well prepared to go from there to Fisk and then Boston College.
Well, public ed was very different when I was going. It was funded, well funded. People believed in it. And there was a serious curriculum. They had there was attention to reading scores, how well you did. It wasn't a lot of test taking, but there was a dedication to educating the youth then that I don't see now. And I come from a long line of educators. My mother was a teacher and a principal. My father was a teacher, my aunts, uncles, my cousins. And so we believe in public ed. However, the deterioration now is, I kind of feel for kids now that have to endure a public ed system because they have definitely ripped the budgets and taken away things that I just took for granted. That you had so many extracurricular activities, so many different chances to take languages, so many places to go. It was just different. So my experience was, it was good. It was sometimes it was racist though, but it was good. I mean, I can't say that there was no racism at my in my secondary education. Yeah, there was. It was Oakland, so there was. But I had a mother that you went to not only that school, but you went to her school after. And that's when you had, in those days, it was called Negro history. That's when you came home and learned that. So it was like going to another school after my public education. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes. Like when you came home, then you had that education as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You learned about who you were. So you didn't get that now. That's when you didn't get that. There wasn't even a Black History Month when I was in elementary school, junior high. I think you had a day. I think you had the Black History Day. You had one day. Okay. And the only person you learned about was Martin Luther King. That was it. I mean, with my mother, I learned a lot of other things. I learned about the slave trade, Fannie Lou Hamer, blah, blah, just many other people, you know. So, yeah.
I mean, this is so, that. This is so fascinating. I want to ask you, I want to go off script a bit because I do want to, you mentioned, I want to get a sense of, if you can kind of paint us a picture about like the racial demographics of the schools that you attended in Oakland at that time. Because you mentioned that your mom was a principal and a teacher, your dad was a teacher. So what schools did they teach at and what were the racial demographics there?
My mom was a principal at Oakland High, and that was pretty diverse. Okay. But before that, she taught at Havens Court and at Elmhurst Junior High. Well, she was a VP at Elmhurst Junior High, and at Tech. By this time, she was an administrator. Many of those schools were, the ratio was more African American. My dad taught at Castlemont, which is very diverse now and a lot of other ethnic communities, but it was mostly African American when my father taught at Castlemont High School. And he was the woodshop teacher there. And my mother was, when she taught at the other school, she taught chemistry, science. She was a scientist. My mother was a chemist. So she taught sciences, yeah. And so most of she taught were other Black students, and except for when she was at Oakland High, she was a principal then, and it was, I think, pretty much, by this time I'm off in Boston, but it was Asian, not so much Latino, and Black and white,
Okay. And did that mirror, did you attend some of the schools?
Now,
that
when
your
I was in
parents
the 50s, you gotta know what Oakland was like. By the time we moved, when I was at, in kindergarten, elementary school, my school was pretty much Black. I was in North Oakland. When we got to East Oakland, which is now pretty much African American, it was not. And it was, people considered it almost like living in the suburbs somewhere. Yeah, so it was white. I think maybe there were 6 Black kids that were at my elementary school. Yeah, that was kind of deep. I had my first encounter of being called the N-word there.
Oh, wow. In elementary school?
In elementary school, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so my mother quickly told me what that was and how do you adjust and what you do and how you do it. My father was a fighter, so he said, if anybody call you that, you fight. And my mother was like, no, she was a peaceful one. Don't you strike any blows. And my father was like, better send them where they came from. So, and in my junior high, it was white. My high school was white also. Skyline was in there. Now it is not. By the time there was a great migration in the 60s, 70s to East Oakland.
Okay.
Yeah, but in the 50s, it wasn't.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that rich history with us. That history, Bay Area history, Oakland history, it's really important. And
but the beauty of, if I can just mention this, the beauty of of being in North Oakland and West Oakland is that it was a vibrant African American community, and at Berkeley also had a smaller, vibrant African American community where families did many things together. Kids were loved and nurtured. If you did something wrong, Miss Jones down the street, it was that type of environment. So growing up in North Oakland was very, very loving. And you knew your neighbors, and you knew Miss So-and-so down the street would, get after you if you had done something wrong, and they all knew each other. So that was so nice being a younger kid in Oakland, having that feeling. Yeah. School, that was something else. But in your community, it was something very different. Yeah. School was just hostile. Your environment was loving. Yeah.
So you talked about this loving, environment and supportive and nurturing and kind of cohesive Black community, right, that you grew up in. And I want to know, what was the role of faith in this community? What faith community did you grow up in, your family, if any?
Honey, Southern Baptist, North Oakland Baptist Church, where you went all day, whether you wanted to or not. The lucky thing, I was lucky in that my mother was a scientist, so she had faith and facts. I mean, she explained things to me that I don't think a lot of other kids got explained. My mother told me very early on that Mary and Joseph had Jesus.
Oh.
That he was born.
Okay.
And so other kids were like, he was immaculate, not for me. And that that I was allowed to question. With her. In church, no. They say, oh, you don't believe, or be quiet. And so by 12, I told my mother, I'm through with this. I didn't want to go to church anymore. And so my mother said, oh no, as long as you live under my roof, you're going to go. But you could continue to question and search. So by the time I left, by the time I was 16, I was searching somewhere else. And I was looking at the Black Muslims. By the time I got to college, I was looking at Baha'i. I was making my way through different things. And but I started at a Baptist. And it was very strong in my family. My grandmother, everybody, except for my uncle, were Baptists.
Mm-hmm. And so you talked about like this exploration that you explored different religious traditions from your childhood. So at the present time now, what are the various religious communities, but also other kinds of communities or groups that you would say that you are a part of? Like what is your membership like in these different organizations?
I'm definitely ATR. I'm an African traditional religion person,
Mm-hmm.
and I practice that particular faith. I have other people that are in different things. I definitely follow a Edo Yoruba track, if you can understand what that means, which takes in for me also Lukumi. I have people that are Mambos and the Voodoo tradition. I have several very close friends that are Mambos. And so in that tradition, we do work together. We're not separated. We know that we have different initiation practices, and there are different, that the names are Loa, Orisha, Ihai. However, we also know that we are one in how we are spiritual and certain ways of and how we think. Our customary things are similar. I do have several friends that are Hindu or Hindi, what you would call, and they follow a guru, and they come to me more through ancestral things than me actually practicing with them. But they all have an ancestral piece. So we do much ancestral work together, which I feel is very, very necessary. Even if you're a Baptist, you need to have ancestral reverence going on in your world. So I have ancestral groups that I'm with an Egbe. I am with a Yoruba community as well as a Mambo community. And I sometimes I actually do go to Amaji or their meditative practices. They do certain meditative practices, and I might do that as a way of quieting, but not my religious practice. Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask a clarifying question. Your friends who are Hindu, is this a tradition? Are they South Asian? Were they born in this tradition, or are these people of African descent?
They are practicing that are
okay. So that ancestral work that you're doing together is from the African-based.
Yes, it's the African.
Okay.
One business partner I had, she was Asian, and I learned the Chinese way of doing. Wen Yi Hong was her name, and but it's still ancestor reverence, though. But it's done a little differently. But it's ancestor reverence. I find that most ancient folks have ancestor reverence as part of their customary traditions. If they're old enough, if their religion is 3,000, 5,000, something like that, 2,000 years old, they have some type of ancestral practice. Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And so now I'm going to ask a question that may or may not be relevant, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Which of these groups are most important to you, if any? Oh,
my ATR group. Yes. I mean, in terms of, you mean my spirituality? Yes, my ATR group. I have different community groups I'm in, like eldering groups and things like that, that are very important as I am in that cycle now. But it's in terms of spirituality, it is my African roots, my African traditional diasporic practice that is the most important for me. Yeah. Okay. So do you want to, can you talk to us a little bit about that? These other groups that you're a part of? You said like you have elder groups that you're a part of? Yes, there's a group called the Council for Global Ancestral Reverence. We are going into our 4th year. It's a 7-year, we made a commitment to meet for 7 years, 7 generations. And we have called together priests of the African diaspora tradition. So there are people in many different practices. And what we do is demonstrate. In our first year, we demonstrated how we call our ancestors. So there was many different ways in which we had Lukumi, Santaria, Isheshe, Mambo, Vudum, Congo, and I might be missing someone. Well, a sister is from Tanzania, but she practices in the Isheshe way. So, so there's this group, and so we have been meeting, and it's the 31st of October every year. We have this prayer. We were saying one prayer all together that we do, and everybody shows there and demonstrate this, and then we do the 9 layers of the soul. So for 9 days later, for 8 days later, because that first day is the first layer, the universal soul. One of the priests and priestesses that is part of the organizing group takes a layer. I have always had the guardian soul, which deals with the Ori, so our destiny. So that's the one that I do. That group is very important to me, and I've made a 7-year commitment. I'm with a elder circle that as most of us are 70, and we are eldering. And so in our eldering, we are faced with many different things: our own mortality, what is our legacy, what do we want to leave behind, what we have accomplished, what are our fears. So it's really like intense group. So I love that group. And it's actually that group is led by Louisa Tish.
Okay.
Yeah. And the group in the Louisa Tish is also a part of the Council for Global Ancestor Reverence. And we have Dr. Kathy Royal, who's another woman who was a Yemaya priestess. And we have 2 Egbe folks that are Shango Yemi and Kami, that they are Shango and Yemaya and Oshun priestesses. So that's a very big group that we do with ancestor things or eldering. I was working with a youth group, but I do that more one-on-one with the kids on my street. They call me Mama Nedra. And so I just love them, and they keep me up and they keep me linguistically correct, because that's the wrong word. You have to use this word. So they keep me up with that. And so having them around is just a wonderful, and I tell anybody, find a teenage friend to keep you current. Yes.
And they're teaching you about language.
Well, not only language, but their perspective. And there are things that, they call me old school, and I am. But I do need to come along. And there's some things I've just said, well, look, I'm a traditionalist on that one. So I'm not moving. So this is where I am. So learn this too, because it is a way of thought. But I try and stay current with them about new things and new ways of looking at things and new ways of being. And so it keeps me fresh, and it keeps me challenged, because I don't get stuck in my old ways, but as I get older, I do kind of see I have patterns of an older way of thinking. Yeah, I mean, I still think that you should date, and they're like, what? Date? We hook up.
I didn't know dating's out of style now.
They hook up.
I didn't know that one. You more hip than I am, Ian. I didn't know dating's out of style.
It's not out of style, but they just don't, it's not that whole courting kind of thing.
They don't court.
They don't court. Yeah.
They don't court. We have to bring courting back.
Yes, they do.
We have to bring back courting.
Yeah.
I'm an old soul. I believe in
what I'm saying. They call you old school. And and dressing, just anyway, even my niece calls me old school, but she likes it. It gives her a view. She said, I get to see how things were. So I give her a little history lesson. And she's part of the family, so she learns more about her own family too.
Right. So talk to me more about your involvement in your current faith community. And it also sounds like you're a part of a couple, right? But you mentioned maybe the Edo Yoruba tradition, if you can explain that one, and like how you became introduced to it, what attracted you to it. Talk to us about that one.
Okay, well, in my spiritual travels of finding my way, which I knew was meeting my spiritual needs, I think it culminated sort of began anew at Fisk. But it was sort of spiritual, not connected to anything, sort of jazz influenced, bebop, but we knew that there was something higher than ourselves. It was Black oriented, and it was brother and sister, kinfolk related. This is where we were with that. And Bihai didn't get it for me and everything. And I read a book called Muntu. And that's how I found out about the Yoruba tradition and Orishas and all that. But there was nobody practicing. There was nothing there. But it sparked me. I left there, came back home, left again, and came back. Now it's about 76. And I'm taking a class with this woman named Louisa Tish. And she's teaching us this song. Eshuba, Eshuba. It's an Eshu song that I come to know later. And so I'm talking to her, and I knew of Orishas, and we're talking, and she's teaching some of these kind of things. And I said, I think I need a reading. I want to read, because I knew you got a reading, that this was an interest. She says, well, I have the perfect person to take you to. So in 1976, I got my first divination. And it was by Roberto Clemente. Enya Biosun was his spiritual name. And he was Lukumi priest. He sat me down, he read me and everything. And from when I got up, I said, this is going to be my godfather. This is it. I just knew it. I can't explain how I knew it, but I did later join his house. And fast forwarding to maybe, I guess it was, I'm going to fast forward, and I go back to Boston. By this time, I'm in the tradition. I have my lekes, I have my warriors, I have those kinds of things, but I'm not initiated into the tradition. I am not a priestess. And that was supposed to be something I'm supposed to do. So I had always been, as they said back in those days, favored by the Orisha Olokun. And so this was a very mystical, mysterious kind of Orisha. And so everybody's like, ooh, Olokun, you can't get made of that. Oh, no. So my God, he said, you're going to have to you're going to have to go to African Nedra. They don't make Olokun in North America. They don't make it in Cuba. They just don't make it here. And no other Orisha would speak for me. So he said, you're going to have to do this. And I'm like, well, that ain't right. What can I do? Yemaya. And I found out that sometimes they do make you Yemaya, and they put a Olokun in your lap in the Lukumi tradition. He said, no, you should be a Olokun. It was, I don't know when it was, 78 or 79 or something like that. I think it was. No, it was in the 80s. I had been going to the Fog Museum for different things, and this man was coming from Benin City, Nigeria, and he was an Olokun priest at the Fog Museum at Harvard doing a lecture. A friend of mine says, girl, you got to go. We ran to this place to see this lecture. And there was this big statuesque man called Dr. Elson Wedgie Ebahon. And he was talking about Olokun and doing all these things. And I just said, this is going to be my godfather. This is I just knew. We met, they did a dinner for him at this sister's house. We talked. The next thing I know, I said, I think I found the guy. He says, well, see if you can, be initiated, what you can do, and blah, blah, blah. We talked back and forth. shortly thereafter, I went through a ceremony and got my first pot from him in 1986. From him.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's what began my journey and how I became an Olokun priestess. And then went to Nigeria to finish that in 90. And so I've been an Olokun priestess since. I have an Ile that he named Inu Nuri Temple. It means the first. So it's the first Olokun temple he has sanctioned here. And it's moved from Boston to now here. I run that temple as the head of the Ile. And there are in the total Ile, it's very small. I keep it small. There are 11 godchildren I have here. And I have others in Boston. So that's I don't know if I answered your question, but that's my journey.
Oh, yes, you did. And so much more. Thank you. It was a great visualization. You're a great storyteller. And of course, right, you would do well with your visualization as a visual artist, right? With the imagery.
And that's a story too of being a visual artist.
Yes, and I wonder, it occurred to me that we're gonna get to that.
Okay.
But so would you say that you've been officially, like, you've been practicing since your initiation in 1986?
Yes.
Or before then?
Before that, because before that, I just wasn't crowned. I was a practitioner. And so I had received Orisha, those that you can receive what they call Adimu without being crowned. So you can receive, so I had received my warriors, which were in the Lukumi tradition, Eshu, Elegba, Ogun, Ochosi, and your Osun. And so I received those, but then later I received Ibeji and Oko, and then I received an Adimu, a pot of Olokun from my godfather. And so I had Olokun energy, that energy housed in the Yoruba tradition way. And in that tradition, the Orisha is female. In the Edo tradition, it is male. And it's just the aspect. We know that our Orishas have male and female aspects to them. So it wasn't a contradiction at all. It was a wonderful thing to have.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. So you mentioned that you have 11 godchildren.
Yes.
In your Ile. And so I want to ask,
in my California Ile.
Oh, here in California, and then you have more in Boston.
Yes.
In Boston, okay.
Scattered around, but yeah, one is in Tanzania. She lives in Tanzania.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm on that topic of children, right? And like your kind of your lineage and sharing these faith traditions. I want to know, do you have any children of your own? And if so, what's their involvement in the tradition?
I have no biological children.
Okay.
No, I have no biological children. I have my niece who's very involved, who's getting involved in the tradition.
Okay.
And I had an adopted daughter that's in the tradition, but who was very interested in the tradition. But I have no biological children. I have many children, though, that I have nurtured from my school children that I had when I was teaching junior high school, who are still around, and they are now grown with children. Yes, and children that I met when I was the director of an adolescent program, who now have children. So I am like a great grandmother, grandmother. I see myself in those roles, yeah, but I have no biological children. Okay.
But there's children like in your family.
In my family, my sister is Baptist. And my family is Baptist. I'm the only one in my I'd say my immediate family that is in this tradition.
Okay.
But they're all very respectful, all do and do ancestral. They all have ancestral shrines, though. Everyone in my family has an ancestral shrine. They just have not gone to the practicing of Orisha worship. They do ancestral reverence. But my niece has her a bead, and I think she's going to come to the tradition, but she hasn't come yet.
Okay. Okay. Let us talk now about, because again, for some reason, the focus was on faith, and I don't have officially questions about your employment, but let's talk about that. Let's talk about a little bit about your employment history, like the jobs that you were led to do. You mentioned that you'd been a teacher, you taught before. I know that you're a visual artist. Can you talk to us a little bit about your, oh yeah, this is a good segue, because then we're going to talk about, creativity and artistic expression in your faith. So kind of let's bridge us a little bit before we go there. Like, how did you get to the point of where you're now, where you're a visual artist, and this is kind of like, this is your occupation, but how did we get to that point?
Okay, well, how I got to teaching is I was in a long line of educators and things like that, but I didn't think I was going to be a teacher. I wanted to be a lawyer. But I went to school. When I got to grad school, I had a teaching fellowship. So I began my teaching career actually as a teaching fellow, teaching philosophy at Boston College. And I liked teaching. I mean, I really did like it, but I just said, I'm not going to teach college. I didn't want to do that. I was going to go on and leave that, go take the.
Can we pause? I'm sorry, just a second. What were you studying? What did you study at Fisk? And then what were you studying at Boston College?
Okay, at Fisk, I was a double major. I was a history and philosophy major, and went on to philosophy at Boston College.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm a phenomenologist, ontologist. Phenomenology is my area. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and so in that, so I taught in the. You had to teach in the teaching program, so I taught there. And that was a whole big thing. We'll talk about that later. And then I would come home. I got involved with the Upward Bound movement there in Boston. And so I started teaching English there in the Upward Bound movement. So sometimes I'd come home and teach there in English. And then I came home one year, my mother said, you need to go get a teaching credential. And I'm like, Mom. And so she would convince everybody to go get a teaching degree. So, you go get a teaching credential, right? And luckily, good enough, though, that it did save me. And sometimes when I was saying resistant to being a professor, I said, let me just go in. So I started substitute teaching and landed at this school in East Oakland. And these kids won my heart. I mean, these junior high school kids, because they thought they knew everything, but didn't know anything. You know what I mean? They were so savvy and so unknowing at the same time, so grown and babies.
Yes.
I don't know if it was just this.
I'm a former middle school teacher. I know exactly.
But I don't know if it was amplified for them being Black in, as they say, from East Oakland or not. And so then you identified yourself by your street. Okay. You're 75 or you're 80. So I was a 90. I lived off of 90th. So when they found out I was a 90, I got respect.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was like, okay. But they really entrenched me to stay longer as a teacher, and then I left that, went and did some other kind of work, became a grant writer and opened a business, entrepreneurial business, writing grants called Word Tech. And then from Word Tech, I did grant writing and for a while. And then this thing evolved. I'm involved in my tradition here. I'm running in the ELA. I'm doing different kinds of things. And this one sister said to me, you know you need to be in the art of living Black. And it was a art thing. I'm like, the art of living Black? I said, girl, I'm not an artist. I don't do it. She said, no, look at the little things that you do when you're talking or thing. And I'm considering that doodling. I'm considering, but I am making pictures and stuff, but I'm, you know, and I would do certain, I said, honey, I'm on my way to Africa, which I was on my way to Africa to receive another, anyway, to receive something else there. And I get there, and you know, I'm thinking, I said, well, if I'm going to be this artist, I'm in Africa. I said, give me a sign. I need a sign. You know, so I get there, I come back, I do what I'm supposed to do there and get my elevations. I come back. By this time, I'm a chief priest. And so I come back, and she says, you got to hurry and make 13 pieces of artwork before, you know, so that you can be in this thing. I said, I am not. And something said, yes, you can. And I did 13 pieces, and I was in love with Romare Bearden, who was a collagist. So I did this because it was like construction. I did these pieces, and I sold 8.
Wow.
Of the 13. So I said, maybe I better look at this again. Maybe I better look at this art thing again. You know, and so from that point on, I began to take it a little more seriously, and until I think I declared myself an artist. And when heard my niece talking to somebody and saying, well, you know, my aunt, she's an artist, you know, and she does the so-and-so, and she's talking about me and the artist and the this and that. I was like, okay, I'm an artist. And so I think, and that was like almost 15 years ago. Yeah. And so my adventure into, as I look back though, I have always dabbled in arts. I never considered myself a visual artist though, because I did poetry, I danced, but I didn't do it visually. But I went back in grad school before I could write my papers, my philosophy papers, I'd always do some kind of visual art piece.
Okay.
But I never thought, I just thought that was meditating, and that's what I did to get to that next step, you know? And so I have 2 of those pieces too left, and my good friend of mine has one of them. Yeah, that I did. So, so that's how I got to be in the art world. And I think I didn't become an artist early on, even though I think I had the abilities, is because I really wasn't encouraged in growing up. I was encouraged academically, but I wasn't encouraged artistically. It was like, oh, do you want to starve? You got to do some stuff. And they connected art with starving.
Okay.
I was like, no, I don't want to starve.
Right.
So I was encouraged to do academic pursuits, but not to seriously pursue, you know, my art stuff until later. And then my mother became my biggest fan.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So.
So now that you've, you know, you found your way, you tell us the story about how you found your way into identifying and owning, right, this identity as an artist, as a visual artist. I want to know how your faith influences your creativity and artistic expression. Right? How does your faith influence what you create and how you create as a visual artist?
Yeah, my in my artist statement, which I thought I wish I had it here so I could just read it to you, but it's my art is based in nature, and when I say in nature, much like our tradition is nature based, but it's female influenced. It has that, which even our tradition is. When I say female influenced, the whole issue of Odu, which is female, which is our stories that emanate from our tradition and Ifa, is there, but the Orisha that keeps coming up and popping up in my work, and I'm looking at it more and more, and I've gone back to some of my old things, is Eshu. Some little face or piece or something that talks about Eshu in my work or femaleness in my work, and those both are beginnings. They're beginnings and endings. Eshu is, you can't do anything, you got to open and close with that, Orisha. And I think that you begin and end with women. So with the female principle. So that informs my work. I am influenced by abstract artists, but also by collages. And the one that I like the most is Romeo Bearden, who also, his storyline was about who he was and our people. And so my art is influenced in collage about us, Black folks in America, but also in the diaspora, what we practice and kind of how we are. So my artwork is influenced like that. And I go from even my abstracts, I have a whole thing on music, but it's jazz. It's John Coltrane, who I love. So
oh yeah, we should talk about that. And of course, the Coltrane Church.
Yes. Oh yes, the Coltrane Church. I've been there.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Bishop. Yeah, we talk about that.
Yeah. And so and also my female singers are Sarah Vaughan and Betty Carter and who I'm Ella Fitzgerald, Craig, and all those sisters. They and I play their music when I do my art. I play jazz when I do my art. Yeah. Okay. Mostly I do jazz when I create. Yeah. I mean, I have put on some of that Barry White kind of, but I end up not doing too much creating with that. I'm always, daydreaming. So yeah. I do a lot of things about women in the tradition with cowrie shell baskets or doing something in initiation. One of my pieces called My Fere Funo Locum has a woman that's being initiated in it, and but it has a whole story. So I find myself telling stories in my paintings and collages too. Yeah, there's always a story, and it's busy. I find myself kind of busy. I took a class once. It was a abstract class, and the lady said, there's about 4 pieces in this one piece. I find that in my art. There's about 2 or 3 different. If I framed them like this, I'm just one story there, and then another story. So I find myself I'm multilingual in my artwork. Yeah.
Talk to me more about that. What do you mean by that? I love that you're multilingual in your artwork.
Yeah. Well, for me, the word is powerful. In our and spoken word, all that kind of stuff is very powerful. But the word has a certain vibratory aspect to it. So that's what I mean by that. My work is multilingual. It has nuance, it has cadence, it has tempo. Just like if I was talking, that it has a certain rhythm. You know how people do the poetry, and well, not the last poetry, but they sometimes have a dip and a dive. My artwork sort of gives you that flavor in that. And I also purposely take either patterns, which is, without getting too esoteric, is the language of Ifa. I'm getting very esoteric now. But in patterning and patterns, that you'll see that in my work too. Squares, circles, symbols, all of that. And that has a rhythm and a language. And so that's what I mean by linguistic. I've only done 2 pieces that actually have the written word in my work. Only 2. One is about love, and the other one was about, which I just actually sold, Mojuba. It was about prayer and how we honor Orisha. It was a small little snippet, little teeny thing. You'd have to kind of go up close to see it, but I wrote out the Mojuba in it. So,
Oh,
yeah. So I only use two things, but I think you can talk without the written word. Just
right.
like the Black woman's expression, she talks to you all the time. You know,
Mhm.
they can't see, people can't see my face, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that is fascinating. Thank you for sharing that that perspective on multilingualism.
yeah.
It's very rich, and um, I just want to share that when you were talking about the inspirations for your art and how Eshu and the female aspect or female energy, and that you see them both as being beginnings and endings,
Yeah.
and featuring in your work. I also see, of course, when I think of Eshu and I think of, a child, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
The childlike character. So there's also that kind of that connection with fertility, with
Yeah.
female
Yeah.
and Eshu and the child of youth and children. And the fact that you're a teacher, and you're very youthful. I experience your energy as being very youthful and very vibrant.
Oh,
Um, so I could see that, like, that energy kind of being close to you for sure. Just and you have the Ibeji.
oh yes, I have the bases.
Yeah, so it's like the children, like this child energy, is something that that's really evident, and that's really awesome to see, that your youthfulness and manifesting in these different ways.
That's good because I think, well, for instance, I'm 72, but that is a number, and it's a great number, but I try and keep, like I said, I keep current with my young friends. They keep me current, and I
Mhm.
think it's important to have sort of a youthful spirit and not become stale. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and so with Eshu, and Eshu is a principle in your life that is choice and it's challenge, and
Mm.
so the principle of Eshu is in the crooked road of life, Eshu make it straight. Let me go from point A to point B without too much difficulty,
Yeah.
but life will take you in many different roads. So in that aspect, as she works in my work, and I show different aspects of life in multi ways of being in life. So that's a part of my life. But one that I feature the most is the feminine, is the divine feminine, is the feminine principle, is femaleness, is womanhood, is fertility, is birth, and so that comes out a lot in my work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, is that intentional,
I think
or is it something that just
it's intentional now, but I think it emanated just as something that was inside of me, but it's intentional now. I will deliberately take a piece and say, I'm doing a piece on the female aspect of this, of love, or of I have a piece called the divines. I call them divine, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they are they're women that I take it in pieces, but it's what would you call it? It look like doodling, but they're symbols, and there's a technique called Zen, Zen tangles. I don't know if you know that
No,
technique.
I'm not familiar.
Okay, Zen tangling is a style that was created by a Zen monk and a calligraphy artist. And it's done with black and white ink. Sometimes they use graphite pen, but you make these, you do it on a tile, and then you make these different designs. Those I then create the designs, cut them up, and create a dress for a woman. But it's symbolically oriented, it's intricate, and it is patterned, which I think is a very female principle. So that is the divine, or you can really see this symbolically, and you can see them because their faces are, the first two are just the lips. One's are blue lips, the other one have red lips, but they have some kind of big hair or they have a gele. So that shows who they are in terms of a woman, because the bottom could be, if I made it more pants-like, could use the same designs to do a male somebody, Devo, I don't know how you would call it for a man. But I also use the patterning of mud cloth for women's designs too. So the divas are an intentional ones that I do. And then I do an intentional one that of mother and child. Of the girl, the baby on the back, mama holding the hand, you know, mama, I think I need something with mama and doing the hair or something. But there are a lot of those out. So yeah, I do that. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you can share, is you've mentioned it a few times now how patterns are a feminine principle. Can you unpack that a little bit more for us? Like, what is it about patterns that are feminine?
Okay, just a simple one. In your family, who told you your pattern of life? Who raised you? Who told you how to do your hair, how to do your thing? Who gave you the ordering and the patterning of your life? Who?
Oh, okay. Right. Certainly mommy played the biggest role.
Okay.
Yeah. The women.
The first pattern that ever comes into a child's life is in the womb. And the pattern is the placenta that begins to create the organs and the things and the nervous system and the organs and it's a pattern. I think that if you wanted to get very scientific about it, you could probably do some mathematical thing orientation around it, you know. But that's the first one. And it's in us as women. I think that we speak in certain rhythmic patterns, particularly when we're trying to direct someone or admonish someone, or I think Black women have a certain rhythmic way of speaking, and it's a pattern. For instance, somebody said, child, that's like all the mamas went to the same school. And they might be from moons and moons and something. So there's some kind of pattern. And it's ancestral. I know that piece. I couldn't tell you specifically, scientifically how that occurs, but I see that as patterns.
Okay.
I see those as blueprints. I see those as exquisite, intrinsic, creative. Okay, I'm gonna get really philosophical. Things in which things emerge, how they come to be. You know what I mean? So
yes.
And this is part of my philosophy talking, because I've studied that kind of stuff. So for me, it's a phenomena. So for me, a phenomena has a pattern. And so I look for those things and I see patterns. And I think if we could really see our own patterns, sometimes we get out of some of them bad ones we got quicker.
Right. Those habits.
Those bad habits. But I think that we are not ruled by patterns. I don't want to say that, but I think that we have patterns in our lives, and sometimes when you can identify and see them, you get a whole different vision of, and a whole different reality of looking at things and looking at ways of things, you know. So I think that Black women's patterns in the world is very, very mystical one, but very beautifully woven. I just think we got a way of adding charm to the world, and it's our thing. Sorry, fellas. It's our way of being, you know, it's our way of talking and thinking. And it's necessary I'm not, because men have their own way. I'm just talking about our way right now, because men have their way, which is cool too, and intricate and, you know, different things. But I think that the first amount of patterning and how we learn it does come from the feminine, from the woman. You know, I think before we different, never mind. I'm not going that far down into it.
Well, hey, this is the place for it, and I thank you for, this is the place for that esoteric
Yeah, but I was
reasoning and
raised in a
questioning.
matriarchal family too, though. See?
Okay.
I was raised in a matriarchal family, and so where women had
Right.
what do you call it? They had power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had say so. Let me just put it like, if I'm talking practically, they had a say on how things went,
Mm-hmm.
and how things evolved, and and my dad had ways too. I mean, because he'd come in and the baby, everything goes. When dad spoke, he F out and listened, But I got to see women articulating who they were very early in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that helped me and shaped me in a lot of different ways, so yeah. And it prepared me for this tradition, because this tradition is, this is kind of be controversial, is matriarchal, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
It's ruled by Odu, which is a female principle, which is female Orisha.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, okay, this is controversial. So, the patriarchal guys are going to be jumping up and down.
It is what it is.
It's now rolling over.
Right. It is what it is. What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Hey. Oh, we came first.
Right. Somebody had to lay the egg.
Very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's really, I know that those who are listening and those who are watching, you've really given us a lot to think about, and really rich and different perspectives on the world. And that's all we hope for, right? That's all we hope for. That's the beauty of interviewing and being able to share stories, is that we can learn, and we can see the world in different ways, that could be, possibly more edifying for us, but we hadn't thought about it. And so I thank you for sharing your beautiful mind with us, right? What a what a beautiful, creative mind, and how you phrase things and talk about language is just, it's really interesting to me, as a linguist, as a sociolinguist. It's really fascinating to me to hear you talk about language. And so thank you for that. And so my last questions are just, wrapping up, are talking about practicing your faith in the Bay Area, right? What are some favorite memories that you have about, that are specifically related to doing your work and your faith traditions here in the Bay? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Well, what stands out in the and when I first began to practice this tradition, is that the African American people that came to this is in the 70s, so a lot of us were young. We were like in our 20s, and so some people's tradition, our parents were like offended, like, oh my God, this is the devil. So it made us a tight-knit group. And that we were going to get our roots, honey. And I look at it now that we always had them, but I mean, for us, this was a trek and a serious road back to the mother country and to the motherland, and to be African and to claim that, and to sort of throw off the vestiges of America. It all seems so naive now, but it was a powerful, powerful experience for us young folk. Now I think people just sort of kind of take it for granted, and I'm African, but growing up in a era when you had to go search for that,
right,
find that, affirm it against all kind of folks, even people in your house,
right?
You ain't no African, you ain't.
Right.
Just
still
kind of
to this day, people
maybe so still to the day.
We still being called devil worshippers and
that is true.
people
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
shunned by their
But I
families.
can remember that, you didn't even show your elected, your beads. That was wrapped up tight. You didn't show any of that. You didn't talk any of that. Like saying now that I'm in this tradition, I'm ATR. Oh, I don't even think that was the term we used. You didn't even speak about it or talk about it. So, but I do remember that and the camaraderie and the beauty. And so, even no matter what economic status or anything that we came from, all that melted away because we were going to get our folks and our people and our belief system and bringing it back. Now what we ran up against is that there were many people that already had kept this alive. For instance, in voodoo was still alive and kicking, but there weren't a lot of voodoo practitioners here. Lucumí was alive and kicking in the Spanish community, but we didn't have as African Americans, So that was a thing to merge and then see how these things also were here, but in a different frame. So that's one experience I hold on to and still keep up with most in my mind, that although we had separate entities, we were really together and searching for our innermost indwelling selves, which was for us, Africa. Yeah. We had some funny, I had some funny moments and things that, mistakes that you make and things that you do. I'm telling my parents about the tradition because they saw it. And my parents, we were always, very open about stuff and talked always about stuff. And so when I had to tell my father about this, and he just looked at me and said, you still believe in one God, right? I said, yes. He said, okay, good. Do whatever you want. Just don't give the church all your money. That was my father's take. My mother's was she wanted to know. And because you all are kind of young, and she at first she was like, is this a cult? She wasn't there until she met these women with children. And she met these older priestesses. And Oyanika, she's 50 years into tradition. She's an Oya priestess. She came and she had like 2 or 3 children. Honey, that was it for my mother. It was okay then, because these were some respectable people. They had children, they had families.
Okay.
20-year-old renegades running around. That's what she said. It was legitimate in my mother's eye as somebody that only knew Baptists, because if it was family embracing and family, she said, okay, as long as you still believe in God. And that was my parents' take on it. Now, some of my other friends that were coming, they had to hide it. They couldn't even, for them, it was not as easy as it was for me. So I appreciate my parents' openness to having a wider embrace of how you practice spirituality.
Yes. Yeah, that was really a blessing.
It was, still is.
Yeah. So, are there any places, like physical locations, buildings or areas in nature that are especially important to your worship?
Oh, the ocean, of course, most emphatically, is the ocean is one. And there any water, the aspect of water, because I am a water orisha, or local is water, the water. But also in going into nature, the forest is another place which is, and when I say forest, I mean where there are large trees and thickets and those kinds of things, not just a park, because they have sort of decimated and taken away, and it's manicured, not the manicured area. Not the, but the other places that are, even though I do love them, I go and have, little socials there. But in terms of my practice of where I feel, where I'm really in tune to the spiritual practices of my tradition, are places like the water, or in very deep forested places, mountaintops for me. Even though I'm kind of low vertigo, I have to get up to the mountain. That up there is very, I feel there a sense of tranquility and peace because it's a very quiet space. The ocean can be kind of loud sometimes. Yeah, so those are the places for me, and those are places where we also take our religious offerings too, to those places. So those are, I think, are the most fundamental places, you know. And of course, people's temples and their shrines and their homes. Yeah, those are sacred spaces for me. But in terms of in nature, it would be water first, the forest second, mountains, and those kind of places. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. You have just been so incredibly generous. We thank you. And is there anything else that you'd like to share before we close?
This year, people get rest, take care of your health, and find a spiritual way of looking daily, some way to daily look at spirit, how it impacts your life daily. It's not something that you do on Sunday, that you do on. But if you can find that in a daily approach without overthinking it, you know, without overthinking it, those little gestures, I feel that would be my parting word. And I say thank goodness for this tradition, because it has saved me in the turmoil that it bubbles in the world out here. It has been a way in which I keep balance and order and faith in folks, because sometimes the folks get you a little unnerved, you know what I mean? Yeah, my tradition keeps me balanced.
Ashe.
Ashe.
So much.
I think we froze.
Did it freeze?
Yeah, it froze just for a hot minute.
For a second? Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We're really going to look forward to speaking with you again for your artistic expression.
So you get to see some of the work in the studio. So as I'm talking, you can actually see what I'm talking about.
Yeah. We're really gonna look forward to that. So thank you so much. And we're going to talk again soon. Until next time.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.